So when we discuss infrastructure, we cover multiple aspects. We go through the resource creation to resource analyzation to security, from security to applications configuration, and so on. So it is a complete procedure where multiple layers have to be cross-checked and multiple layers have to be implemented and configured. So how on our existing infrastructures or when onboarding a new client, we can have better security. Right. So this is a list of things, one of the basic things which should be getting implemented right before we even create the infrastructure, whether it is AWS, Azure, private cloud, or any of your SaaS applications. This needs to be implemented right before creating the resource for the end user. While creating new infrastructures, it is always our focus, it is always our priority that we provide the best, that we figure out like filter out like what's the best resource as per this exact requirement. But what needs the actual focus is also the security portion. Why? Because the resource could be the best, the resources, the applications, the specification which we are using, it could be of the best uh, instance sizing or of the best sort, but if the security is not on the point, the entire infrastructure can go down and that risk is bigger. I have a few things listed. Right. So when we are discussing security, I have a list of 4 to 5 things which needs to be implemented right away as soon as we create our infrastructure, as soon as we create the Azure or AWS console, right? Or if it's private cloud, if we have access to our virtualization dashboard, these are a few things which needs to be implemented. MFA in itself plays a very big role because the access, because if access is secured, the entire configuration, entire resources which are inside of an account, those are getting protected. If the access and landing login page is not having an MFA configured, whether it is a global administrator or whether it is a read user, if MFA is not there, uh, we are indirectly making ourselves vulnerable to a brute force, and that brute force will surely get the password to your user account, and they will be able, and that person that uh, that person with the wrong intent would be able to log in into your account and would be able to see what your organization is using. So MFA is the topmost priority. In Azure we have Entra ID MFA, as we have separate licenses options now available for all the users, right? So we can create conditional access there as per the RBAC and as per the uh, roles needed for your administrator or normal users. Per application, we can also create the MFA with Entra ID. Then we have IAMFA, basically Identity Access Management in AWS. There we can again create MFA. We can have authenticators for our users. Uh, to basically from root user to even IAM user, all the users can have an authenticator application with them with the hardware tokens to improve the security at the login page. Now with private cloud, we obviously have multiple options to integrate open source solutions or third party partners. Using those, we can create the MFA panel, and if not that, we can have jump hosts at the gateway level, and we can even have VPN. So VPN does have the functionality to create a hardware token or a MFA token for the authentication. So that can be integrated as the first point of access when we discuss private cloud and when we are discussing private cloud resources. Because with private cloud, we don't have such dashboards like Azure or AWS where we can basically first have a login page, then view get access to all of our resources. But if it is, let's suppose we are getting access to a standalone host. So even standalone host now has the availability of options such as authentication and authenticator configuration for TOTP tokens, right? Proxmox and VMware has it. So we can configure that there. SaaS applications in itself comes with a bunch of features, because why applications are more focused towards the dashboard. Whether it is a locally hosted application which you have made, or it is a SaaS tool or a SaaS login dashboard which you have got from a private cloud vendor or from a service provider, we have the options to configure authenticators there on the login page itself. As you can see, SSO and facility resistant login pages are now available, and we can have passkeys preferred per app and MFA fallback. So even with, let's suppose we are discussing some of, for example, a backup tool is there and it comes with MFA. Now we even have the specific types of MFA. So we can have multiple level of securities, and we can have better in poor level of securities. So the MFA now comes with multiple options. So it's your responsibility, if you are the IT person who is going to look after the security or who is creating the infrastructure or the resources, deploying the resources, it's your responsibility to have the proper MFA configured. Right, then we have RBAC and IAM policies. As we all are aware, it is role-based access control, identity access management. We basically create a hierarchy of users on the basis of which we assign the exact roles which the user needs. What is one of the very big things which is very most of the time neglected is that the users in our organization or at the customer's infrastructure level, there are direct administrators users are given to the client. That's a mentality where we need to put in some work. Why? Because giving the direct administrator to whether it is an end user or the end client organization's IT team or their administrators is uh, is totally up to the scenario, is totally up to the situation, like how they have asked for the access. But if it is a properly isolated environment where each and every activity needs to be monitored and security is a priority, in that scenario we need to create separate administrator accounts, we need to create separate users. If somebody has a responsibility just to look after the virtual machines, then they should be having access just to the virtual machines, not to the entire subscription. So this is our responsibility to have the proper roles assigned and sorted, right? Then we have again enter ID groups for the and then we can configure the least and highest privilege in IAM policies, roles over users, SCP at organization level. Yes, in private cloud we again come with AD groups, right? So with Active Directory, we have always had such options available since a very long time. We have had these options available with us in the AD infrastructures where we have multiple users and all the users do have access to the certain roles only needed for them, right? So then again, in SaaS applications we have license-based roles, right? So again, when it comes down to a SaaS application, and if there is a dashboard, then we can have monitoring users, we can have billing administrators, we can have complete portal administrators, right? We can have just uh, location administrators if there is a particular branch to which only a single person needs to have access to their own resources only and not for the other branch. Then we have that level of role distribution available as well. Why? Because this comes down to the tool itself. If there are not such features and you are the developer of that tool, then it's your responsibility to make such features. And if you're getting the services from a private cloud vendor or from a service provider, then it is your responsibility to at least question them that if such features are available or not, because the security comes totally down up to your own research and how much you have cross-checked the tool and what you're going to basically purchase for your organization, right? Next we have backup. So one of the very important players in when it comes down to security. Backup alone has the power to basically roll back your entire organization to a particular point of time as per your RPO and RTO standards, right? We in these cloud platforms do have very good backup options available as compared to private cloud, but private cloud does have very good backup options now available as well. And with the SaaS applications, we are aware that SaaS applications work on the front end level, but in the back end they again come down, the backup comes down to the storage focused area only. Why? Because whether it is in Azure backup, AWS backup, or private cloud or SaaS application, in the backend the security needs to be implemented on multiple levels. Why? Because when the backup is taken from an endpoint or from let's suppose there is an instance or there is a resource on your public cloud and there is a resource on your private cloud, the security of the backup needs to be checked on multiple levels. Why? Because the endpoint is making connection to a secure tunnel. If the scenario is if the backup is being taken in a manner that it is being taken to the cloud publicly, then there has to be a secure tunnel, there has to be a secure point route through which we are taking the backup to the destination, to our storage location. And if it is an environment like Azure or AWS where the resources directly or indirectly in the same LAN subnet, then in those scenarios the security is by default implemented. In SaaS applications, again, uh, the backend security needs to be there, the tunnels, the secure SSLs, and the decryption, mutability, warm technologies. All these things basically make a good backup solution. So as we have Azure backup here, we have the immutable vault feature, we have soft delete on. So basically soft delete is we have retention periods in backups, right? So when we discuss soft delete, it is simply that I'll tell you that in AWS and Azure, there is a soft delete period. In Azure, we have 10 days of soft delete period. In AWS, if we are using an object lock bucket, S3 bucket, which is working on the compliance mode, we have 30 days of immutability assigned to each and every object. So let's suppose you have configured the backup with 7 days of retention. That soft delete happens post your retention period. It keeps the backup. Let's suppose there is a 7 days of retention. The backup period, the backup window has finished. You have stopped the job and you are not taking the backups any longer. Those 7 restore points will stay there, and the copies, as soon as the days go down, they will move into a soft immutability period. That immutability period, when that immutability period ends, then the soft delete happens. So this is a feature, or let's say a functionality which comes with Azure and AWS. In S3, again, we have object lock available, which is immutability. So object lock is that nobody can delete the data inside of the bucket before the object lock retention period is over, right? Worm again is there, versioning is again available, cross region replication is available. And one more thing, if we are using a good backup tool, because the platform, because this is storage, right? S3 is a storage, Blob is a storage. If you are using a good backup tool basically for our backup purposes, let's suppose we are using an enterprise grade tool like Veeam or Dhruva, then we have much more additional functionalities available from those software side, so that they can apply their own security, they can apply their own encryption, they can take over on the complete storage and apply their own methodologies, right? So we have such options available with good enterprise grade softwares dedicated to backup, right? In again private cloud, air gap technology is now available for private cloud as well, right? We have offsite backups, we have immutable snapshots now available in our virtualization platforms. 3-to-1 rule can be enforced anywhere if a mediator backup tool is there. So we will be having three copies in so we will be having three separate copies of our data in two different type of storages and one to be air gapped. Right. Then there is vendor backup API in our SaaS solutions, right? Export to own storage, validate, restore SLA. So these are a few things which can be drilled down and can be tested in a frequency of, let's suppose, a week or a month. So this comes down to our own compliance requirements, right? Then we have NSGs, right? So when we have MFA configured role, users created properly with their assigned roles, backup is now there. Then what is left is your NSGs, right? So network security group, or let's suppose let's say firewall. So firewall, again, as we all are aware that it is the very first point of inbound and outbound access. So whatever rules are configured there, whatever parameters which we have defined on the firewall level, so whatever rules we have defined on the firewall level, we will be getting their effects applied onto our resources, onto our virtual machines, onto our containers. So these rules in itself are so powerful that they can cut down our possibility of risk, possibility of vulnerability to even 80 to 90%. Why? Because when we have things whitelisted for unnecessary reasons, we are basically inviting risk to our doorstep. When we have good when we have a properly managed firewall in our organization, in our cloud or on-premise infrastructure, we are cutting down the risk to 90%. Why? Because the attack surface, it is in our own hands, right? If you are properly using a threat intel product, if you are manually blacklisting all the malicious IP addresses which are out there, as we all as we are aware that threat feeds are now easily available on the internet. We can simply go download a threat feed, pick up all the IP addresses, domains, hashes, URLs, which whatever is mentioned in that threat feed. If you simply block that on your firewall, you will be cutting down a very big amount of risk. Right. So NSGs in Azure, we have network security groups, deny all by default, and create ASG grouping as per your requirement. Again, in AWS, we have security groups. So we can create zero trust micro security groups and NACLs at the subnet level. So if we have NACLs at the subnet level, we will be having a better security on to our virtual machines before the security group takes place. Right. Then for the firewall tools, we have VLAN segmentation and deny all egress default. So deny all egress default. So it is again as we saw in Azure. So by default, it has to be the configuration which we do on our firewalls. It has to be done in a way that we are not allowing most of the stuff. We are denying everything, then allowing only what is needed. Right. So it happens a lot of time that people who are working remotely and not using VPNs or any sort of tunnel, right? Basically, users which are working remotely, they end up having every most of the things whitelisted on for their resources. Let's say an entire country will be whitelisted there, and we will be inviting unnecessary risks. So it is always better to use mediators. It is always better to use applications which will be getting you connected to your resource and not allow the whole internet to basically hit your resource, right? So ZTNA is there, VPNs are there. So again in SaaS tool we have IP allow listing and to restrict to corp IP on ZTNA proxy. So again ZTNA proxy can be added here so that your SaaS tool works under that proxy of a secure environment. Then we have logging. Again, monitoring plays a very big role. In Azure, we have Azure Monitor, AWS, we have CloudTrail. In private cloud, we have logs available, audit logs are there, right? Centralized log server can be made. So log keeping is a very important activity to be done, because in cloud we have the functionality enabled by default. Basically some portion of it is not enabled, it has to be manually enabled if we are going in-depth insights or metrics. So in that scenario it has to be enabled, but by default we are getting enough logs made regularly, and they also do have good retention of those logs available on the public cloud side. But on the private cloud, the logs is something which we need to dedicatedly create a log server for, and to keep those logs with regular backups and automated backups, because there are IT people which I have spoken with, which basically which take logs seriously, and they have dedicated log servers made in their organization for them, and they regularly pull the logs and store them in a separate log server, so that in case of any let's suppose emergency or an unwanted scenario, they have all the logs available so that they can cross check like what exactly happened. Then we have the audit log export. Yes, so in SaaS platforms, in SaaS applications, we on the console we have the audit logs export option available. We also have session logs, so we can use those and retain them for 90 plus days. So this is totally up to the retention which you configure on your tool, this particular line. And you can also discuss with your again SaaS provider for the retention of all this. Now SIEM. So SIEM is something which is an extra, not extra, it is needed. It is definitely 100% required. Why? Because when we have the firewall configured, when we have the backup configured, we have the access sorted out, like we have the proper security on the access level, we have the logs in case to monitor like what caused the problem. SIEM is something which works on the real time. SIEM, or let's suppose if you are using just an endpoint security tool, SIEM is something better than that. Just the entire endpoint security tool, SIEM will be getting you protected against the bigger level of malware threats or bigger level of ransomwares. So SIEM will be detecting that in the real time and will be providing the protection against to that. So in Azure we have the Sentinel, right? We have the native connectors available. We can create alert rules, right? We have the playbooks available. In AWS we have the security lake, right? And in private cloud, we can again, we have syslog to see if you're more focused towards having proper solutions for every separate tool. In that scenario, we can have a proper SIEM tool configured, installed on your application or database servers. Like whatever your resources are, you can have a proper SIEM tool like Sentinel-1 configured onto your uh, endpoint. You can get it configured on your virtual machines. We have Sentinel-1, we have CrowdStrike, and so on. So the tools are out there. You can properly get something decided, and you can properly cross-check those, and you can have one of those configured onto your resources. So that single integration, that single configuration will be making a very big change on the security level, because SIEM comes now with a lot of security. So we have the SIEM solutions available. If you are working on private cloud as well, then you can still again have your own SIEM application, your own SIEM solution of your choice configured onto your public cloud resources. So again, in SaaS tools, the SIEM needs to be there in the backend. Now, right. So these SIEM solutions, we can have a centralized SIEM or a SOC platform, right? Which would be getting us unified alert triage, correlation rules, and incident response. So these are a few things which will improve your security, which will basically will be reducing your attack surface. There are a few things which we need to put our focus on towards while creating a new infrastructure or creating new resources for any clients, because the resources which we make are needed to do the actual work. Without them, the production won't be working on the level it should. But these few things are something which needs to be implemented only once, and then only the maintenance has to be done, only the cross checking and weekly reviewing has to be done, that if you have found anything or not. And most of the stuff is automated, so you don't actually have to sit down and invest about an hour or two every day just to see like what actually happened or is happening. We will be getting the alerts automatically for most of the stuff. So this is something which every IT person, as the IT person for your organization, you should be applying these things. You should be working on all of this stuff when creating or onboarding a new client. So thank you so much for being with me. I will come again with a similar topic very soon. Thank you.